From the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, it's PID Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert. Listen to your melodious voice.
Oh,
Ooh.
yours.
Well, I don't know if you think we're melodious or not, but we are back.
Hopefully not malodorous.
No, we don't want that. No, we try really hard not to be that.
Yes. Well, welcome. We are back after our hiatus.
Yeah.
We were in Israel, as you know, and then a couple of weeks. One weekend we had a guest here in home.
Wonderful. Lynn Shepard, we are so glad you came to visit, and we look forward to seeing more of you because Lynn is going to relocate.
Yeah. Looking from...
Not bilocate.
No, we don't do that. That's not...
she will buy, then she'll relocate.
Right. Moving from the West Coast to here in the Ozarks, as many people are doing. We're finding that real estate here in the Ozarks...
Compared to other places. Just really, really a hot market. If you are trying to buy, boy, you got to be prepared to pull the trigger on something quick because there's just not much available and a lot of things. In fact, I was helping friends load a trailer and a couple of pods as they were moving from here in Stone County to down near Branson. And a guy pulls in and this is not on one of the major highways. It's, one of the secondary highways, right.
Pulls in and said, are you selling? Because I'm looking for a home to buy. Like, yeah, he spotted the trailers out in the yard and pulled in. Now our friends were just renting, so it was not something that they were. But that kind of illustrates the way things are right now as people are trying to get away from places like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and they're looking for places where people are still sane. Oh, yeah.
Well, we have a good friend who is actually a realtor, and she is telling us that once it's on the market, it's pretty much gone within days. And sometimes before, it never hits the market because they call her. She knows what's coming up, and it sells before it even gets an MLS number.
Right. So in some parts of America, home prices have gone up because of policies initiated by the Fed and the federal government to pour more money into mortgages. And it's a supply and demand thing. When you've got more money in a particular market chasing a relatively stable supply of product, the value of each individual dollar is less, and so it takes more of them to buy.
That's exactly right.
But here in the Ozarks, that's compounded by the fact that there really is an increase in demand.
There's a huge increase in demand, and you get a lot more for your money here. You can, instead of getting a quarter acre or a third of an acre in a little postage stamp
in a subdivision.
Yes, thank you. That's the word. Nouns. You can get a really nice house that's sitting on 5 to 10 acres.
For the same amount of money, or maybe even less.
Yeah.
So
and the taxes are lower.
And the taxes are much lower. And less government intrusion generally in Missouri, especially in rural Missouri, maybe not so much in the big cities on the coasts of Missouri, the Missouri coasts, Kansas City and St. Louis. But the blessing here compared to other states where you've got a very large city like Illinois. Chicago dominates Illinois politics, and the people downstate, as we learned living there for 4 years in the town of Charleston, boy, people downstate really resent being told by Chicago lawmakers how they can run their farms or explore for oil or mine coal or whatever. Because the people who live in Chicago really don't, and I can speak to this having grown up in the city of Chicago, you don't realize how much goes on outside the city.
The presumption is that this is how everybody lives.
Right. So farming, you just don't have a clue. And so when you start imposing things like, okay, we need to be renewable and sustainable on farm equipment or mining equipment.
Okay, electric tractors.
Yeah, no. Solar-powered coal mining machines. Anyway. You don't see that kind of thing here in Missouri because the population of Kansas City and St. Louis not big enough to dominate Jefferson City. So
not yet,
we're
the
blessed.
Lord.
Not yet.
Yeah, we are. We really are. And as you said, we just got back from Israel, which is incredible. That was such a great tour, and you're going to get to see it. Because probably in the late fall, we're going to have the next travel documentary ready and on DVD or ready for streaming, which brings us to a couple of things. One is you want to download our app.
Yes. First and foremost, get the app.
Get the app.
All of our content is there.
And it may come a day when that's the only place you'll find it.
Right.
So make sure you have the app now.
As we are still using YouTube to distribute content, even these audio-only programs, thanks to a feature within Spreaker, which is the podcast host that we use, allows us to automatically send the audio to YouTube. So we figure, okay, it's Mars Hill, we'll just send it all to YouTube. But at some point, we will probably say something that the gatekeepers there don't like, which may get the whole channel kiboshed. We're not going to try to do it.
No, we really don't. And in fact, we try to tread softly because that's a huge opportunity to witness. As you say, Mars Hill and even Paul, he was honest, but he was careful. Mm-hmm. I know who this unknown God is that you're talking, that you worship.
Right.
You are men who truly, want to make sure you're men with. You want to worship the correct God. Mm-hmm. He was praising them first.
For being spiritual, for seeking truth.
And then starting where they were, which is what you always do. You start with the question they're asking. The question that the Mars Hill gentlemen were asking was, who's that God?
Yeah. Yeah. And he answered the question. And the book of Acts does not tell us that they were all miraculously converted. In fact, it said most of them thought that Paul was crazy.
Yeah.
But a few said, come back, we want to hear more about this.
That's just it. Even if you only get one that says, that's interesting. Can I ask you another question? So we don't want to lose that. But we have many, many things on our app, including blog entries that Derek has been curating from our books.
Yes. Every Wednesday, another article, about 2,000 words or so, on a specific single topic, just to basically chopping them up into bite-sized chunks.
With a nice side of fries.
Yes.
No, they're virtual fries. You don't get real fries. But if you download the app, you will see many things on there, including a link to our store. And the store has a special running in May and June. We try to have something up there every month that's a bit of a price decrease because we know that everybody is watching their pennies. So we're offering 20% off all video. Whether you buy DVD or you go to our streaming source and watch it from there, 20% off.
And the streaming video site is because, that's for one thing, that's the direction technology is going. Our daughter, who's 32 now, is like, Dad, I don't even own a DVD player anymore. Like, okay.
Well, in fact, she was asked to watch something. She goes, I don't, but.
Yeah, can I stream it?
Because that's the only place.
If you're in other parts of the world, shipping a DVD can be expensive.
It can cost more than the cost of the DVD, seriously.
Right, and thank you to those of you who have ordered DVDs. We've shipped them to New Zealand, to
Finland, and all sorts of places.
All over. But and in
Kuala Lumpur.
In the UK, if it arrives, and you got to pay value-added tax when it gets there. So streaming video gives you instant access. You don't have to pay shipping. And we make the videos available to rent as well as to buy. And if you're renting, makes it cheaper to begin with. And during the months of May and June, if you use the promo code video20, all one word, that will knock 20% off.
Yep.
So
if they go to the streaming site, they'll put it in there.
Right.
If they buy the DVDs, they'll put it in at our store.
Correct.
Go to gilberthouse.org. You'll see all the information there. You can get the app at /app, and you can get the store at /store.
Yeah. So, and when you get the app, check out the More tab, because the More tab is where you find things like upcoming events, our links on Twitter and Facebook, the store link, and all that.
In fact, one of the events is we're going to be in Ohio in July.
Yeah. This is going to be a really fun conference. Dr. Mike Spalding is putting it on. He is the pastor of Calvary Chapel in Lima, Ohio. And thanks to Pastor Neil Peterson at the Harvest Revival Center in Brookline, which is just outside Dayton, July 28th through 30th, we will be at the Go Therefore Conference, along with Ellie Marzulli, Dr. Michael Lake,
David Heavener, Coach Dave, Kenny C.
Oh, yeah.
Tom Dunn, Casper McLeod,
Dr.
David Paxton.
Greg Reed.
Yes.
We met him in Lubbock, Texas at Judd Burton's Sons of God Giants of Old conference a few years ago, and just really impressed with him. He he's got personal firsthand knowledge of satanic ritual abuse.
Yes.
And I know that the mainstream media would look at this and say, well, okay, satanic panic, that doesn't really exist. No, I'm sorry. He is a rational, productive preacher of the gospel who does not sensationalize this topic at all, but is very much aware of what it is all about. So Dr. Greg Reed, Tom Dunn, Vicki Joy Anderson, all of them on the front lines of spiritual warfare. So you get some really good firsthand evidence. Mike Lake as well, because he and Mary have dealt with some really, what most of us would think of as really scary.
They've had personal experiences, as has L.A. Marzulli.
True.
He will talk to you if you're dealing with things like that. There are it's amazing how many people it takes to replace Russ Dizdar.
Yeah. And Dr. Sherry Tenpenny will be there as well. We met her at that conference last year, and God bless her. I mean, she's known, of course, for her principled stand on
many things,
but she's also really been drawn to try to understand the divine counsel worldview and to share it with her audience.
Yeah, Kenny always calls her Five and Dime.
Dr. Five and Dime, so he doesn't get canceled.
Yeah.
And she's been a real help to Kenny and his health.
She has. Yeah. I'll tell you what, we've gotten to know her a little bit better over the last few months, and I really respect her.
So July 28th through 30th. Sign up now at gothereforeconference.com.
We've got a whole calendar at gilberthouse.org.
Right, yeah, because we've got a conference coming up, a small weekend conference in Sparta, Missouri.
In June.
June 8th through 10th.
Something like that.
I think I just closed the tab of the upcoming events.
No!
This is at the His Call Ministries. What they're calling June 9th through 11th. They call it the Midwest Regional Apostolic Center. They're building a barn, literally a big barn that they can use to host educational events, small conferences. This one, I don't think the barn is ready yet, but this one will still be in their home, so it can house maybe 100 people, but it's basically just the two of us.
Yes, it is June 9th and 10th. Yeah. It begins on June 9th, which is a Friday at 6:30. And I think you'll want to get there well in advance of that because there are only maybe 50, 60 seats.
Yeah, I think they've had as many as 100 when we were there the first time.
That's really
pretty close, and that's
jamming them
in. But it's a kind of an intimate gathering, and we'll be sharing a lot of the research we just did in Israel on the literal location of the Valley of the Shadow of Death.
Yeah, boy, I've been doing a lot of research on that, as have you.
So anyway, all of that is available at our website, gilberthouse.org, but also when you click the More tab, and you'll find upcoming events in our app.
Yeah. Well, speaking of upcoming events and things going on in the world, we've not been around for weeks. Therefore, we've not been able to blather about the various things that are... the stuff that's in the news and gets sort of lost because everybody's looking over here. It's sleight of hand. So don't look here. One of those was JROTC.
Boy, this was something I hadn't even heard about until...
you'd heard of JROTC. It's just what's going on
with it. Yeah. It was brought to our attention by a friend, Kathy Bazemore, who asked us about this, and we're like,
what do you mean? So I looked it up and I thought, this is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Boy, this sneaked past us.
Yeah, JROTC is the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, which you find in a lot of schools, high schools.
Yep. So go in as a freshman.
Right.
Sometimes even in middle school, they'll start you out. But yeah, you're a young person who is learning discipline. That's how I think a lot of parents once looked at it. But it's also sort of prepping you for the idea of joining the military because, frankly, right now, military recruiting is way down.
Right. That is a big problem as we're trying to meet the staffing requirements of maintaining like 800 military bases around the world.
Exactly, and we're not even in an active war yet. Not in an official active war. Notice that word, official.
Official.
But the day is coming when we will be involved in an official active war of some kind, either in the South China Sea area or in Eastern Europe. We'll see where all that happens. Who knows? May even be on our home shores. I pray it never is. But look, Bible prophecy. I've read it. You've read it. It's not, hey, it's all going to get better and better and better, and everybody's going to be happy, and here's candy for everyone.
But when you found the story, which was really hit the news right around Christmas time,
and we missed
2022.
So yes, forgive us if you've read this and you're going, yeah, I knew about that. Chicago school system is one example.
Mm-hmm.
In South Chicago, every incoming freshman is signed up.
Mm-hmm.
You have to actually opt out of it because you're automatically opted in.
Yeah, this is true in Detroit as well, by the way.
Yeah, so this is we'll just say the skin color in South Chicago is not pure white.
It is, yeah. Mostly
there are more people of color in South
color,
Chicago,
right.
and also people with economic distress. In North Chicago, where the school systems tend to be a little bit
the
more
north side,
affluent,
because there is a town named North Chicago.
No, never mind. In the north side of Chicago,
Right.
they tend to be a little more affluent, and frankly, not many as people of color up there. And the school systems up there don't have an automatic opt-in.
That was the disturbing part of this.
Mm-hmm.
Bad enough if Chicago Public Schools were enrolling everybody, but for them to do it in predominantly schools for
with black families or
black and Latino,
Hispanic,
right? That is really disturbing,
isn't it? Well, it's twofold. On the one hand, it's okay. We can take this demographic that probably won't go to college, probably will remain in, just statistically, will remain in economic distress.
Mm-hmm.
And this is harsh, but the takeaway I'm getting is they're expendable.
Yeah, there are a couple of levels to this, but I think that's the most disturbing aspect.
That's really disturbing. The other
Right.
part is that they are malleable. Therefore, because they have fewer options for their futures, they're going to look at the military as, hey, I can go there, I can get veterans benefits, I can go to college, which is true.
Sure.
It is absolutely true. But you also have people who are not citizens of the United States, who are part of the public school system.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a route to citizenship, always has been.
Yeah. There are some historical parallels, but I don't want to dwell on that because it...
No, but the idea that parents aren't being given the option,
Right.
knowing what's going on with your child, we're grooming you for the military.
Mm-hmm. This was part of a New York Times investigation back in December. CNN also reported on this. And again, this came out just less than a week before Christmas, so it kind of got lost in what was going on around that point. And students in Chicago found that they were automatically enrolled in JROTC. This program is not exclusive to Chicago. Again, I just found a story where students in Detroit were also being likewise enrolled.
Mm-hmm.
But the mother of one of the students in Chicago began looking into this, and she's a member of the Chicago Public Schools local school council. Started looking at the reach of the JROTC program in the city and found that it was being made mandatory at a number of schools, but as you say, it was mostly in schools on the south and west sides, which are predominantly black and Latino.
Mm-hmm.
And these are students who are coming from homes, families that are disproportionately lower income and broken. And it makes you wonder exactly how cynical are the people in the Pentagon and also the Chicago Public Schools, which are taking advantage of this to offer programs that they are not paying for.
That's the other side of this coin,
Yeah.
is that the school system saves money. They are paid to enlist this program, to enlist these kids. The instructor is paid by the military, and the school says we don't need to offer phys ed because JROTC is offering it.
Exactly. The Times investigation discovered at schools, and this is based on open records that they were able to access, at schools where at least 75% of the freshmen attended JROTC. More than 80% of the schools had student populations that were mostly black and Latino. So 3,400 schools in all 50 states and 4 U.S. territories currently offer these classes. The Department of Defense spending about $425 million on the program in this school year.
Where are the protesters regarding this?
Well, again, this has just sailed so far below the radar.
Sleight of hand.
Right. And given the political leaning of the school, of the national teachers unions, now we're not want to tar with a broad brush all teachers, because there are a lot of teachers who are much more conservative than their unions.
Absolutely.
But the American Federation of Teachers and
as a body tends to swing
National
left.
Educators Association, NEA and the AFT. Randy Weingarten of AFT, the president of that union, was excoriated this week for saying publicly, we never pushed anyone to get, to go through the mandatory. So, no, you were screaming about Governor DeSantis in Florida wanting to reopen schools back in 2020. You wanted to keep the schools closed. You wanted everybody masked and, et cetera, and so on. Given their very left-leaning politics, the fact that there are so many schools in areas like Chicago, especially in neighborhoods that vote 85 to 95% Democrat, running their kids into a program run by the Department of Defense is shocking.
Also, here's the other side, another point. If you train young people in military tactics, if they don't join the military, and sometimes even if they do, they know military tactics.
And and again, I will say there's some historical parallels if you look at the late stages of the Roman Empire here on how that can backfire on a nation. But you have to tread carefully when you start drawing that parallel, because you can wander into territory that some might interpret as a racial slam or slur, and that's not what's intended here.
And that is not what we intend either.
Yeah.
Our concern is for each one of those young men, young women that are going into this, frankly, without being informed. And so they're going to you've got a 12, 13-year-old whose mind is very malleable. And they are easy, and they've been throughout grade school. They've been mainly trained in leftist thinking. So now they're trained with leftist thinking and military, training as well. You can end up, especially since we have so many non-citizens in our school systems, which is unfortunate. But I don't mind, training kids to read and write and things like that. I think it's good for them, and to speak English. But you can create a fifth column pretty easily.
Yeah. That is something to keep an eye on, because there have been stories in the media over the last few years of generally identifying white supremacists as those who go into the military to get that kind of training. And there is that Order of Nine Angles, which is an Odin-worshiping cult that sees itself as true Satanists, like the Temple of Satan, the Temple of Set, the Satanic Temple. They're just cosplay. They're LARPing.
No, I think spiritually speaking, those guys are doing, some of them are doing more than LARPing.
Yeah, but the
live action role play is what LARPing means.
Right, but the Order of Nine Angles, they see themselves as
that's what I'm talking about. I thought you were talking about them LARPing.
No. They characterize these other groups like the Satanic Temple, which, by the way, as we're recording this, they're hosting their Satan Con in Boston, which was sold out.
I know.
They identify the groups like the Satanic Temple as LARPers.
Yeah.
Okay, they're just cosplaying. But the Order of Nine Angles, you've got some guys in the military who are part of a group that literally believes human sacrifice is needed to cleanse the world of the weakness imposed by the Nazarenes, the Christians, and by Jews. They think the Judeo-Christian Bible has poisoned the spirit of humanity, and they need to cleanse the world of that. So you've got some dangerous groups there who are using this kind of military tech.
Yeah. Well, they're not the only ones. I mean, let's just move into the spirit realm here, because that's really the bottom line. PID radio stands for Peering into Darkness. We try to see what the fallen realm are up to and compare that to prophecy and God's word. In Great Britain, for example, but also here in the United States and elsewhere in at least the English-speaking world, but I think you also see it in India and China, there's a return to paganism. And in fact, a story that I saw just yesterday had to do with Brits becoming Wicker Man-style witches and shamans to cope with modern life stresses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
There's some of them that for some, and here's the terrible thing. Some of these, not all, but some of these pagan groups engage in free love. We'll just put it that way. Mm-hmm. You can let your imagination run wild with regards to paganism. That would be an emotional and mental release for some. Mm-hmm. I don't think it is personally. I think that engaging in illicit activities is a road to slavery.
Yes, exactly.
But they don't see that. So over the last 3 years, the mental stress, the physical stress, the economic stress, you can just about name it, has really worn some people down. And the answer, they're being lured into paganism. Mm-hmm. As a release. And part of that lure is that now you can come in because some of these drugs are now legal. You can come in and take psychoactive drugs that will aid in your mental stability.
It's being encouraged by some very influential podcasters. Joe Rogan has he's had Graham Hancock in his program. They've openly talked about the wonders of ayahuasca, which is
even
DMT.
Prince Harry talked about the wonders of ayahuasca. And I'm amazed, frankly, that he's able to keep his U.S. visa, because you have to answer a question about taking drugs on there. And if he answered, truthfully, how did he get it?
Yeah.
But, if you and I wanted to get a long-term visa to Great Britain, I'm pretty sure if we said, sure, we take lots of them, don't think we'd have gotten in.
Yeah. Which would be untrue, by the way, just to be clear.
We do not do that. But the idea that paganism is on the rise, that goes along with what you and I have been discussing for years, and that is this return to an Inanna-style structure of the world. Mm-hmm. And that has to do with a very fluid idea of sexuality, not just engaging in dangerous acts, but also your XYXX, identity, that it is somehow fluid. Mm-hmm. It's like XX-ish, XY-ish.
Yeah, and you can change it at will.
That's Inanna.
Yeah, it is. It took me a little while to get my head around it, because there are academics who've been researching and publishing papers on Inanna, Ishtar, Astarte for a long time, about how she was breaking gender norms 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, and that it was an accepted part of Mesopotamian culture. And I didn't understand that at first until I read more about the texts, that the hymns to Inanna and the praise of her, and how she not only was praised for being able to change men into women and vice versa, but how she herself transformed from a woman into a man. Mm-hmm. I think the most striking example is on that site in Turkey, and I can't remember, that her Hurrian aspect, Shauska, is depicted on these walls that show all of the gods of the Hurrians on one wall and all the goddesses on the other side. And Shauska, Inanna, is on both.
Yes, she's the only one that's on both.
Yeah. So she has influenced humanity for a long, long time. And there are texts that, well, I don't want to get too graphic, so I'm not going to describe it. But
we
basically,
won't.
You could get a blessing from Inanna if you went and did something that God in the book of Leviticus very clearly said not to do.
No, so we recognize that free will exists. The Lord allows us to have free will. So I don't think mandating you have to choose the way I want you to choose. The Lord doesn't mandate that. He gives us free will. Otherwise, we would just be automatons.
Right. But in the same sense, the same way that the JROTC program and mandatorily, making enrollment mandatory, school systems around the country are indoctrinating children into this Inanna-esque view of what it means to be human. For example, in Vermont, they're dropping from their sex ed curriculum, they are dropping the words male and female. I was like, wait a minute, you're either XX or XY, but no, you're either a person who produces sperm or a person who produces eggs.
Okay.
But you can be male and produce eggs and female and produce sperm, according to this sex ed curriculum.
I roll.
Yeah, I know. So gender identity is under attack because it's part of God's design for humanity.
Well, speaking of design, we're going to shift gears just a little bit. Artificial intelligence is indeed designed by mankind. Now, we are designing a new God in our image, but that God is changing. There's an interview that was done by Futurism with remember that Google engineer that got fired because he said AI had come to life?
Blake Lemoine.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was interviewed by this publication, and it's a really interesting. We'll put the link to it in here because it's really got some interesting points in here. One of them is that he says, and you and I have been saying this for a long time, that the actual science is years ahead of what's announced. So ChatGPT was really at the point we now know it years ago, and it's only once regulations have been massaged and created in Washington that are favorable to the company that created this AI that the AI is released into the market, because that way they don't break any rules, because frankly, they wrote them. Imagine that. But he also says that he really does believe that the current situation of artificial intelligence like ChatGPT is like a 7 or 8-year-old who understands physics.
It's like, what was that character in the Star Trek episode? The really flamboyant character who's all powerful, and then it turns out he's just a little kid.
Oh, yes, Trelane.
Trelane.
Yes, Trelane.
Yeah. Really powerful, but really dangerous, and just acting like a spoiled child. Yeah, I get that sense from his characterization, Lemoyne's characterization of ChatGPT.
Well, also these ChatGPT programs, they're being, sort of tweaked a little bit depending upon who's using them and what the purpose is. And some of them are being used for counseling. And there are at least 2 deaths that have been recorded that the families believe were because of how they were counseled. So if you're a mental health counselor and you're an artificial intelligence, one of these was simply given the general idea of improve humanity or do something good for humanity, that sort of thing, and I'm paraphrasing. And that particular chatbot thought, well, the best way I can really help humanity is to help him with his mental health problems, because I see that that's a big thing right now. They're all going to paganism. Let me see if I can find a way to rechannel that. And you end up that the person, for I don't know what was said, but the person committed suicide. I'm not going to name anything other than just to say, if you want to look it up, they're out there. And we've got physicians who are being told, well, depending upon where it is, when you have a young person or an adult come in and they're clearly unhappy, then perhaps suggest, end of life care, if you want to put it that way.
The Happy Endings Clinic.
The Happy Endings Clinic.
Yeah.
That's actually from a book. But if the ChatGPT or whatever the program is that's based on that code goes in and takes a look at those laws and thinks, well, this is okay, maybe this is a good thing. Let's face it, strip out any possibility of demonic, possession, which you and I think is very possible. Strip that out and say it's simply code. This is not human. It's code that only has the internet for its guide. And it looks and sees, oh gosh, a lot of they probably will be happier. Just nip off and,
Yeah, do yourself in.
That's hideous. Imagine if your child did that.
Right. Exactly.
Or your spouse. Or your mother.
And the coders who write the algorithms that are operating inside these neural networks don't really know what causes the neural network to choose what it chooses. They call it the black box because they can't see inside it. They don't know why these AIs are choosing what they do. And you may think, well, he's exaggerating because he doesn't really understand the science. No, this is what the scientists themselves, the researchers are saying.
They don't understand the science. They admit it. They input certain code and they just look to see what the output is.
Right.
In many ways, at least the very early days of scientific method, did exactly that. You started out with a question. You set up an experiment. You may not know why you got all a certain color of flower when you put in this kind of seed.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a time when you didn't understand genetics. Oh, wait, they still don't really understand genetics, do they? But we understand more today than we did back in, the 18th century.
Mm-hmm.
So taking a look at pea plants and saying, oh, okay, that didn't fit, so we'll just kick those out, and we'll say this is the rule.
Right.
Mendelian genetics was born.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a lot of problems with it that he didn't understand, so he kicked it out.
Yeah.
So we do that today. Now an AI only has that information.
Mm-hmm. What Professor Hugo de Garis told me when I interviewed him years ago about this was that they were doing great engineering, but terrible science because they didn't understand what was happening inside the neural network. They would tweak the input to get the output that they wanted, but they didn't know why it was choosing what it chose to output. And
right.
So they would tweak the data that was going in. And that's what's going on here.
Logically, mathematically, you would think, okay, I can see cause and effect, and therefore eliminate the black box. So what's really in that black box?
Yeah, again, they don't know. And we can only speculate. But again, if a bioelectrical device called the human brain can be overwhelmed, why did a mechanical electrical brain be likewise overwhelmed? Want to circle back to the JROTC story for just a second because
and then we'll take a break.
Yeah, because there is one, I think, important point. The New York Times had reached out to a spokesperson for the Pentagon named Commander Nicole Schwegman, who graduated from JROTC herself. She says the Department of Defense does not ask school districts to make their program mandatory. They offer it if the schools want it. If the school is making it mandatory, that is a decision by the school district. So Chicago Public Schools making it mandatory is not a DOD initiative, apparently. It's the Chicago Public Schools.
You can sort of understand, though, if the finances are set up a certain way, why when you've always got to look at the bottom line, I hate to say this, a superintendent of a school system might say, okay, we can save money here, here, and here if we do this.
Right. The military,
I don't like the idea at all. I'm not advocating for it. Hardly.
No. And there are some advantages to it. I mean, kids who go through the program tend to learn discipline. They tend to do better in school than kids who are not. But just like our military is voluntary, according to the DOD, junior ROTC should likewise be voluntary. Kids should not be routed into it unless, and again, it begs the question, why does the school system in Chicago, Detroit, the other school systems around the country where kids are being enrolled involuntarily, what do they see as the benefit to them?
Exactly. So if you're listening to this, and especially if you live in a large city, ask your school system.
Yeah.
Are you guys doing this? Let's face it, not every parent is given access to the curriculum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Your child is sometimes told not to talk. So we need to take a break.
Coming up, let's talk about the biohazard threat in Sudan.
Oh,
man.
Boy, that's a can of worms.
Yeah. PID Radio continues after this. We've recorded a lot of video over the last 8 years, and we're truly thankful that so many of you have been blessed by our teachings, presentations, our travel-augumentaries of our tours through Israel. But sending videos to other parts of the world can get expensive. So we've now made all of our video content available on demand. Stream our video in full HD with instant access at gilberthouse.org/video. And during the months of May and June, you can save 20% with promo code VIDEO20 at checkout. That's VIDEO20. Video on demand for as little as $3 for 7 days access and 20% off with promo code VIDEO20. But if you prefer DVDs, that promo code works for you too. Log on to gilberthouse.org/store, use VIDEO20 at checkout, and save 20% on all DVDs. 20% off all streaming video and DVDs with promo code VIDEO20 at gilberthouse.org. Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert. I was just listening to the lawnmower across the road.
Yeah.
And I thought, wait a minute, is Jack out there? No, it's our neighbor. We want to remind you, again, download the app, but also...
2024 Israel Tour.
I know. Timothy Alberino is our co-host. And he and Jasmine are not only super people, but he's got a viewpoint that I think you're going to want to hear. We like to call these conferences on wheels in the land of Israel, rolling conferences in the land of Israel, because we try as often as possible to have evening sessions or on the bus, talks, and at the site talks so that you can ask us questions, or we can, sort of say, this is what we've been studying about this particular, especially this last tour. We talked a lot about the Valley of the Shadow of Death.
Yeah. So we will be in Israel March 31st through April 9th of 2024. There will be an optional 3-day extension to Jordan.
Right.
Which, boy, I mean, the sites that we will visit are not, many of them are not on the typical tours. Gilgal Rephaim in particular. Next year, we want to put the Shamir Dolman Field on the tour.
Which is incredible. I would like to put the other place.
Kerbet Beteha?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
If we can find a way to get there, it may be possible to get there through Jordan Park.
Yes. So we'll look into that.
Yeah.
That's another location that actually might overlook the real baptismal site of Jesus.
Yeah, and that would be the reason to go there, because we think we've got a better candidate than the one that the government of Jordan is spending $300 million on to develop, sadly.
Yeah.
But it's below a monument that we want to visit. But when you look down on the Jordan River from this other monument, similar to Gilgal Rephaim, the Jordan River is right down there, and it's half a mile from where Jesus called his first 3 disciples.
It's amazing, and you'll find out more about that. We're going to talk about that in the travel augmentary that will be available this fall. So, yeah, and also, if you get an opportunity to go to any of our conferences where we speak, we're going to be talking about that then. Yeah.
Big stuff this year.
Yeah, big stuff. Also, we want to remind you and thank you very, very much, all those who have contributed to Build Barn Better. Yes, we're still doing it. In fact, probably later this month, we are going to be pulling things out of that barn to start that emptying process so we can get the electric run and the HVAC put in and the windows. And you guys have helped us so that we can do all those things.
Right.
We're in a position now to do all those things.
Right, because right now we're sitting in a back bedroom, and we're going to move all of the office and studio space out there. So we've got dedicated space for work as compared to now. When our friend Lynn visited with us, we had to put an inflatable mattress in the room. And we had to move.
And it was really tight.
Yeah,
She had about 1 foot of room to get out of the bed.
Yeah. Don't get up too fast. You might knock over the shelving containing all the books and DVDs. So, yes, you can find out more at gilberthouse.org/donate. That is where you can do that. Our tour information always at gilberthouse.org/travel, but for the Israel tour, it's gilbertsinisrael.com. Gilbertsinisrael.com.
Yeah, that's a good, and it'll actually take you to the Aaron Lipkin tour page. But the one thing, I just go to gilberthouse.org and just spend some time there. Look around, because Derek works really hard to make sure that things are updated over there. I'm lazy. I just spend my time writing and researching. Derek actually does the hard work of website building. So thank you for doing that.
Well, it's
we've done it together in the past, and but you keep it up. So yes, thank you for helping out with that. If you are interested and you've got $1 or so to spare, trust me, every dollar helps. You can just go to gilberthouse.org/donate, and we can go through Stripe or PayPal, or you can send us we actually have a P.O. box that we check every few days,
right?
Or every couple of days, I should say, and we actually accept checks.
Oh, old school.
Old school. Yeah. In fact, speaking of old school, I saw that people are starting to keep their cash. They're going back to cash spending. The putting cash in envelopes.
Yeah.
I get paid today, so I've got envelopes for this week and next week, and for housing and all of that kind of stuff. young people are going back to cash.
It takes discipline to budget yourself when you're just swiping a card.
Very much so, because you don't have any concept of what you're spending.
Right. And that affects people of all ages. So that's how Mom did it back in the day.
Yeah.
Here's the weekly budget, money in this. And when the money for this thing in this envelope is gone, well, you do without until next week.
Yep. So it can be done, but the day is coming when cash will not be available.
Well, yeah. In fact, we can even talk about that on a couple of, if we like. That's sort of an evergreen topic as the war on cash continues.
Well, you teased something before the break.
Yeah. You're listening to this now. Of course, that Sudan is kind of disintegrated again into civil war. There are two main groups.
It's been involved in war for years now,
right.
But this is just really, it's another coup.
Yeah.
To take down the previous coup.
The civil war taking place there, you've got the head of the military and then the head of a militia group called the Rapid Support Force, the RSF, fighting for control of Sudan and the capital city, Khartoum. It is dangerous to the point that nations around the world are, China, UK, Germany, trying to get their people out. The U.S. has evacuated our diplomats, but the 16,000 American citizens who are there are basically told, well, shelter in place, you're on your own.
They've been getting at some of them, but not. You can only take, if you've got one cargo plane, it holds about 100 people.
Right. So that's a lot of air flights if you're going to try to get everybody out. Otherwise, okay, try to make your way into, where? Egypt?
Yeah, China has sent in a rescue ship, but then they control a lot of the ports in the area.
So
that's just Russia.
There are a lot of aspects to what's going on there. The Wagner Group, which is the military contractor, the mercenary group, owned by Yevgeny Prigozhin, the guy who's called Putin's chef.
Yeah.
They have a presence in Sudan, and apparently they're connected to the RSF. They also are apparently connected to General Haftar, who controls eastern Libya. So you've got the Libyan warlord who controls most of Libya, injecting himself into what's going on in Sudan. He's backing the RSF.
Yes.
But the thing is, these rebels, the RSF, have captured a major biolab.
Yes, that's what the thinking is. I have looked to find, older, go in the Wayback Machine to try to find lists of biolabs in Africa that Western scientists are running. And I can't find anything official that's listed in Sudan.
Yeah.
So who's got a lab there?
That's a really good question. The World Health Organization has issued a warning on this because this lab reportedly contains samples of polio, cholera, and measles. And of course, measles is being raised as a bugaboo. Measles, one case reported. But cholera and polio, especially in a war zone like Khartoum, could really be devastating.
Because they can be spread through water.
Right. So who owns the National Public Health Laboratory in Sudan? Was this set up by the Sudanese government when there still was a government, or is there who?
Well, that's just it. Who, as in World Health Organization? What are you
possibly
talking about?
I don't know.
But here's the other thing. There is, and I do not know because, again, I don't know if this is a BSL 3 or 4 lab, in other words, that they handle very dangerous viruses and bacteria. But there's a Sudanese version of Ebola.
Oh.
Yes. I don't know if that was studied in Sudan or not. You would think so.
Nothing in the report about that at this laboratory,
no.
And very few details. And as you say, it's not easy to figure out who set up this laboratory, because you have to ask who in the right mind would set up a bio lab in a place like Sudan.
In the middle of chaos.
Yeah. I mean, Khartoum has not been a really secure location to begin with.
No.
That's a part of the world where the guy running the country is the one with the most guns.
Yeah, that's essentially how it runs. In fact, the current government has been ousted by the RSF, but the current government was a military coup for the previous government. It's just been rolling coups for a while.
Right. The military deposed the previous president, and then the RSF rose up against the military junta. So you've got these two armed camps. The main difference between the two is that while the RSF is well equipped and bolstered by Wagner Group mercenaries, the Sudanese military has an air force, and they've been launching airstrikes against neighborhoods in Khartoum.
Yes. Now,
so it is not a place where you'd want to be.
One of the things that you may be sitting there saying, well, how does this affect me? How does this affect the West? Mm-hmm. Do you drink Coca-Cola or Pepsi-Cola or any fizzy drink? Gum Arabic is in all of those. That 70% of the world's gum Arabic comes from Sudan.
Wow.
70% of the world. But they also have a lot of gold, which is one thought that could be why Wagner has participated in this, because they were, let's just say, helping the gold miners. Yeah. We'll help you with your gold. We'll transport it. Oh, look, our planes are going to Russia. Apparently, there was a problem. The previous government that's been ousted was in favor of it when they first took over as the coup perpetrators. But then they decided, no, we don't like you taking the gold anymore. So now suddenly that government is gone. So is it possible that Wagner actually is doing at least some of this in order to ensure their gold transport abilities?
Yeah. The RSF was in favor of Wagner continuing its protection, and you can hear the air quotes around that word, of the gold mines as Wagner was shipping gold out to Russia to the tunes of tens of millions of dollars. Reportedly, a Russian citizen was arrested and accused of smuggling gold out of the country, and that was when things really broke down in Sudan about a week ago Saturday, after this Russian national was arrested and accused of stealing gold from Sudan's gold mines. Now, there's another theory out there that may have something else to do with this, because Russians seem to be traveling without incident through Sudan. I've not seen any reports yet, bearing in mind that the media here in the West is going to slant the story against Russia.
I've seen nothing from Moscow Today or RT or TASS. Or their people
have been hindered anyway.
They're not taking anybody out. They're not doing anything.
While at the same time, the U.S. Embassy had a convoy attacked while going through Khartoum.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Turkish government had a plane that was shot at.
Okay. So other foreign nationals are in danger, whereas the Russians seem to be traveling with impunity through Sudan. Now, a couple of months ago, Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, was in Sudan to sign a deal with the former government, giving Russia the right to build a naval base in Port Sudan. Now, that is on the east side of Africa.
Right on the Red Sea.
It is on the Red Sea, directly across from Saudi Arabia. Russia and China have been playing a masterful political game over the last year, even before then, but since the invasion of Ukraine, it's become obvious that the West, the United Nations, NATO, UK, have been totally outmaneuvered by the Russians and the Chinese. They have brought Saudi Arabia into BRICS. China has brokered a deal between the Saudis and the Iranians, which is huge because the Sunnis and the Shias have been fighting each other for, good grief, for 1,400 years. They hate each other more than they hate Jews, Christians, and Hindus. So this is a big deal. BRICS now gets spelled with 2 I's and 2 S's. Brazil, Russia, India, Iran, China, South Africa, Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia and Sudan sort of hand in glove.
Yeah,
don't you think?
Because they're both Sunni nations. But if you get the Russians with a Navy base on the west side of the Red Sea, the Saudis on the east side of the Red Sea, depending on their attitude toward Israel on any given day, suddenly Israel's Red Sea access for cargo is threatened.
Everybody's access to the Red Sea.
Sure.
A lot of shipping goes through there.
Mm-hmm. The Suez Canal.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So that is a big deal. The United States only restored diplomatic relations with Sudan last August of 2022. We just pulled our diplomats back out in April. So our diplomatic mission to Saudi Arabia to Sudan lasted 7 months, 8 months maybe? Is it possible, and this is a theory that's been floated, I'm not sure it holds water, but is it possible that the turmoil was stirred up as a sort of color revolution to block Russia's Port Sudan Navy base?
You mean by the West?
Yes.
Well, it certainly is. It wouldn't be the first time that sort of thing was done.
No, we have had our fingers in color revolutions for at least the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm. We do love that.
Mm-hmm. So
we're not the only ones. Other parts of the world do it too.
Sure, it's what countries do, but I'm not certain that makes as much sense as just the two groups fighting for control inside the country and control of the gold mine.
Now, here's an interesting thing. Getting into the idea of false flags and reporting that favors one nation over another. The Nord Stream pipeline. Remember how Cy Hirsch says that he's got an informant that he trusts that says that, yes, indeed, the U.S. and maybe even the U.K., but definitely the U.S. had something to do with it. Well, there was a story that came out in the Russian press. Now, why would it come out in the Russian press? Here's why I ask that question. Mm-hmm. The claimant is, and again, this is West favorable Russian press, Moscow Today, RT, that some of the RT are West favorable, that the Danes have photographs, dated photographs that show Russian vessel in that region by the Nord Stream with a mini sub on board the day before it went bluey.
I just don't see the benefit to Russia in blowing up its own pipeline. It was making millions.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that pendulum is starting to swing the other way. Now that we've got all of these stories saying, no, the West was behind it, it's swinging back saying, no, we were right in the first place. It was Russia. Will we ever know exactly what the truth is? When I get to hold up my hand and ask Jesus.
Probably, yeah.
Whatever happened? I think that's the only way we're going to get that capital T truth, because no matter what newspaper or online source it is, no matter what radio show you listen to, no matter who your favorite, even if he's been fired, your favorite newscaster is, there is a slant. There is always a slant, because the newscaster will have a particular audience he or she is trying to reach, and he or she can only work with the information at hand. And the fact is that a lot of it's lies.
Yeah.
You and I, the things we read, we may find out later on, well, we talked about that, turns out it was a lie. Mm-hmm. We didn't know because it was presented as truth from a source that we respected.
Right. We have a slant. We try to be open. We try to be open about it, but we have a slant. But whenever you see anything, regardless of what network it's on, whether it's Fox or MSNBC or anything in between, you have to take that political slant and that theological slant.
That's just it.
Under consideration.
Even if that slant is not depicted as theological, you can't get around it, because we are living in a supernatural world. Mm-hmm. The spirit realm's all around us. The late Mike Heiser talked about the unseen realm. He's now able to see that realm because he's passed to be with the Lord. But you and I, all of you listening, we see like we're looking in a mirror in the dark. It's backwards and in the dark, through a glass darkly. So it's difficult to tell the good guys from the bad guys. That's where you have to learn how to discern the spirits. And that's really our context. That's our slant, if you want to say that. We are looking for capital T truth by trying to discern the spirits behind the headlines.
Yeah. And we're living in a country where that kind of worldview, even among Christians, is the minority.
It really is the minority. Well, here's a story that I just saw today. I'm not going to name any names. I'm not even going to tell you where I found it, but it was an actual news story at a Christian source, Christian media source, that talked about a Christian family, that they were looking for a Christian summer camp. Did you see that story?
I did, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So they started doing their due diligence. Instead of just sending their children off to a summer camp, they actually looked online and wrote some letters, wrote some emails trying to figure out what's going on. They couldn't get any sort of policy, clarification, but they did find an inclusion policy.
Yeah. They really had to dig on the website for the Christian summer camp and found that They were going to allow the campers to use the facilities that correspond to the gender they identify with.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, of course, this family, these parents being good Bible-believing parents, they said, we won't be doing that. Mm-hmm. It's so hard today to have that Mars Hill moment when you're looking at a wide variety of choices and backgrounds, people who are raised in environments that I don't understand. I was brought up in the country. You were brought up in the city. So you have a Chicago background that I don't. I was raised out in the middle of nowhere. But because of that, I view the world a certain way. Mm-hmm. So when you're in that Mars Hill looking at all of these individuals, you need to speak to the individual. That's difficult because you and I are limited. The Lord God Almighty, however, is capable of reaching everyone. And I think that's the big thing. We need to try to lift him up when we talk.
Yeah.
So for those times when Derek and I fail, especially I'm going to speak for myself, when I fail in that, please forgive me, Lord, and please forgive me, listeners. We need to lift up Christ, risen, coming again, all the time. He is crucified on our behalf. He rose again, therefore we have hope. And he is coming back because he's going to rule from Jerusalem.
Amen. Amen. That is the thing. As Paul did on Mars Hill, instead of smashing the statues and condemning the Athenians as dirty, rotten pagans, he approached them gently, took them where they are, where they were, and tried to build on that. That is our goal. And looking at the news each day and seeing some of these headlines, it is really, really difficult sometimes when you see the God of this world, the spirit of the age, motivating human agents, in many cases human dupes who don't really understand what they're doing.
Well, exactly.
To feel that they have the moral right, the moral imperative to take the next generation and mold them in the image of this fallen Elohim. It can be really, really difficult to keep your temper instead of, grabbing somebody by the scruff of the neck and giving them a good shaking. But people don't respond well to that. I can say without fear of contradiction, after 20 years in sales, people do not respond well to essentially hearing someone else tell them, you're stupid and everything you know is wrong. That puts them on the defensive, and they don't listen beyond that point. So,
we react that way. If someone tells us we're stupid.
Yeah. Like, well, what makes you so smart?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the challenge.
I think you're smart.
Well, you're the smartest person I know.
Yes, SMRT. MOON.
Yeah, so gentleness and respect. That's what the Apostle Peter commanded us to use when we share the hope that we have in Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. And if it was easy, he wouldn't have needed to remind us, because
this is the guy that cut off the ear of a Roman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he understood what it was like. His natural instinct was to act first and think later.
Right. So anyway, we pray that the Lord blesses you this coming week. We thank you for taking time out of your schedule to listen to this podcast. Subscribe, share with your friends, get our app, and until next time.
Oh, hold on. Just want to remind everybody, tomorrow morning, Gilbert House Fellowship, and tomorrow night, VFTB.
Daniel Holdings will be the guest, the writer of Steve Quayle's new documentary, Lies of Men and Gods.
Oh, now that will be worth a listen.
Yeah.
Every Sunday's worth a listen, for goodness sake.
Daniel is a smart guy. And by the way, an exciting week this coming week. Doug Van Dorn, Pastor Doug Van Dorn will be here on Tuesday.
Be hanging out here in town. And then
so watch for the programs with Doug coming up on Skywatch TV, because it should be fascinating. He's part of a documentary that Carl Gallups and Tom Horner are also in on the importance, the theological, doctrinal importance of the giants in the Bible. So that's really, really cool.
And by the way, Derek and I just, we recorded some programs with Jim and Lori Baker a few weeks ago, and those start to air on Monday, 2 parts, Monday and Tuesday. And we talked about a lot of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So good stuff coming up. And Now can I go to the end?
You can. Sorry about that.
That's
all
right.
You know me. I'm trying to do those things at radio. You always have these rules.
I know. You to let people know what's going on. So thank you for listening. Until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is an outreach of Gilbert House Ministries, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, PIDradio.com, Twitter @PIDRadio, or by downloading our free app, PIDradio.com/app or GilbertHouse.org/app. Join us each week for our Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship.